Good morning. And today I would like to talk a little bit about how to read a science textbook and how to make that information useful to you. And I will completely admit that this was something that I really struggled with a lot in school. And so this presentation is basically going to be me trying to help you using a lot of the techniques that I had to use to get through school. And um, they can seem a little difficult at first, but I can guarantee you as you practice it, it will become much easier. And so it's kind of like anything else, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And so um, in Canvas, what I will often give you the textbook broken down up, into its sections. And so if you want to go ahead and or in Canvas, go ahead and open up this chapter in Notability, because Notability is the app that we're going to use for this, and it makes it so significantly easier. If you're using just a paper copy or something like that, you can do the same thing, but I really like using Notability for that, so because it's all on the iPad and so on. So the first thing you'll want to do is, once you get the chapter open, is to really just kind of skim it and look at the titles and different things like that. What you want to do is kind of get an idea of what this text is going to be about. So don't just read it, start reading it, just kind of skim it first and think about, what is this going to be? And so as I look at this first title, it's going to be, parts of the atom. And so it's quite clear that what I'm going to be reading about are the different, subatomic particles and what make up the atom. And so as I start to read, I'll want to highlight the title. So just, highlight that title. And as you're highlighting, pause a second and kind of think about what is it that I'm going to be reading about. The next thing I want to do is, as I'm reading, I want to be looking for essential vocabulary. So, we outlined at the beginning of this essential learning specific and important words that we're going to need to know. And so we actually already defined those. And so as I'm reading, if I see one of those words, I want to highlight it probably in a different color than the rest of the things. And so that's what I want to be looking for. And then I also want to oftentimes look for a summary idea or a summary statement within the paragraph or within that section. Now, textbook writers do a really good job of really highlighting those important things. And so, look for those. If you're reading the text and you notice that something is being repeated a couple times, that should be your indicator that that is something that's really important, and I want to go back to that. And just kind of think about the book as like a textbook writer might. Like, why did they include the information they did in table 2 here? That must be important stuff if they're going to make a table about it. And so, be more kind of metacognitive is the word for it. But try to think at a higher level as far as like, what is the information that's being presented. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to the next page on there, and let's do the same thing. So again, I have different elements, different number of protons as my title. And so this must be, looking at the different elements, and each of those elements is going to have a different number of protons. And remember, when we talked about it yesterday in class, I said that the number of protons are really the defining characteristic of an atom, because the number of protons determines what element it is. And so again, that's basically what this is saying. And again, I can see I have 2 essential vocabulary as I kind of skim this. And what I want to point out here is the atomic number was in bold and italicized. And so that really jumped out at the page for me. So clearly the author thought that was important, but what they didn't think was important was element. But Mr. Peterson said that that is an essential vocabulary. And so, I will want to make sure that that is highlighted. So even though it's not highlighted or bold or italicized by the author, I want to make sure that I highlight that and really bring that out. And then there are several other key ideas that are in there. Again, atoms of different elements contain different number of protons. That is clearly something that is important because it's mentioned several times. It's in fact the title of that section. And so that is what's really important. And then I also want to make sure that I answer the key checks or the reading checks. They call them different things in different parts of the book, and it's kind of confusing. But if you see that green check mark or a reading check, read those and answer those, because what that tells you is that is important. So the question is, what two numbers can be used to identify an element? And that would be the atomic number, which is the number of protons. So those two numbers, which are the same, can be used to identify what the element is, because that's the number that's at the top of that element tile within the periodic table of elements. And so we'll definitely get back to that. And then, so that's really an effective way of marking up the text. And so as you read, do those different things. And then what you can do with that mutted version of the text is then we're going to use that to build our notes in our science notebook. So I will just kind of take those notes and use that to build my chapter summary. And so the titles kind of become my titles in my notes. The tables can become tables in my notes. The summary ideas can become the summary ideas in my notes, and so on. So I'm kind of extracting or pulling that information, that key information, into my science notebook, because then I can use that information on the test. I can use my science notebook, the information I've pulled out of that, to do that. And so it's very useful. So in this video, we talked about, how to properly MUTT, how to make a chapter summary. And then from that, we're going to start talking about, how to make my notes much more useful within my science notebook. So I hope this was useful. If you have any additional questions, please let me know.